Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend. I'm Jason Godbey, and today on the program, we're going to be taking a look at some of the films from this year's Slamdance Film Festival. But first, here's a quick word from our sponsor.
Sponsored by Blackmagic Design, the world's highest quality products for the feature film, post and broadcast industries. Blackmagicdesign.com.
And joining me now, all the way from LA, our man in Hollywood and the man behind ActuallyPaid.com, Mr. Bill Hammon.
How you doing?
Good to have you back, buddy. It's been a minute since we did this.
Yep.
Was it AFI Fest was the last thing?
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
This is the inaugural LA edition of Slamdance that you went to. So what was it like? Give me a little rundown of the festival.
For those who don't know, Slamdance, I refer to it colloquially as Sundance's cool alternative cousin. Like, Sundance is a prestige festival, and it kind of sets the bar for the year on what independent cinema is going to bring out. A lot of those films end up getting wide releases. They become awards contenders towards the end of the year. Slamdance is much more of, I'm not going to say kitsch or camp, because it's just more artistic and creative and a little outside of the mainstream, like what independent film used to be about 30 years ago. So a lot of these films, you're not going to see them getting wide theatrical releases. A lot of them might end up on streamers, but there are so many creative and hardworking artists just putting out their passions in this festival. It kind of becomes like a communal experience. Like, for example, I believe the first day of the festival was held at the Directors Guild headquarters in Hollywood, but most of it was held in a small studio lot, I believe it was called Quixote, in West Hollywood. And there's about 3 or 4 sound stages on this little lot, which served as also the screening rooms. And there's one main building that where everybody just kind of huddled together as a lounge. There was a bar there. Just have some drinks, that kind of stuff. Do the cool version of schmoozing, whatever that is. There was a trailer set up where all they did was just have you come in for like 10-minute AR experience, like augmented reality games to try out. There was a tent off to the side where people were serving food. There were food trucks everywhere. People putting on concerts. Like it was more like a music festival than a film festival in some respects. There was a booth where you could sign up to support these petitions to basically change the tax code in California so that productions will want to stay in LA rather than farming themselves out all over the country and into other countries to save 15 cents. So it's very much about the community of cinema rather than the business of cinema.
Really cool. I'm glad that you were able to get out there. What did you see? Tell us about what films did you see?
All right, let's start off with one of the big winners of the festival, the jury prize for a narrative feature, Gamma Rays. This is a French-Canadian film. It was filmed in Montreal, and I believe they used some of the same filming locations that they did for Universal Language, which was Canada's submission last year for the Oscars. A lot of the buildings look very familiar. This is a movie very much about disaffected youth and the immigrant experience. It's basically 3 isolated stories that occasionally intersect with 3 young stars. The first his name is Toussaint. He's kind of like socially anxious, spends a lot of time by himself, and on his summer break, he likes to go fishing in the nearby river, and he finds a message in a bottle. And the message is simply a phone number, so he calls it, and he makes a friend over the phone with this woman from just the next town over. The bottle didn't travel too far. But this mystery woman who's basically trying to help him through his anxieties and help him meet people, talk to them, socialize. Then you have Abdel, who is hosting his cousin Omar for the summer. And Omar is very boisterous, but not very socially aware. Well, like he's not uncouth or rude by any means, but he's just very extroverted, and that's just not something that Abdel's used to. So eventually he ditches his cousin just to try to have a night on his own, and then it becomes a search for him because we don't know where the guy ended up. Then you have Fatima, who is the daughter of Moroccan immigrants, and she's trying to basically use her gap year between high school and college to, make some money and make something of herself. She's working at a supermarket, but she quits because there's rude customers and everything like that. And she's also getting hounded by an associate of hers. It's heavily hinted that she's basically in debt to a loan shark. And she's basically has to be his enforcer with other delinquent payments or face violence of her own. So it's these three, relatively young people, I would say like late teens, early 20s at most, trying to navigate their lives as both young people, but also as immigrants in Canada. And there's a lot of fun elements as far as, there's like this weird thematic thing about how much you engage with your screens versus how much you socialize with real people. It's immaculately edited and shot. They use two really cool devices for scene transitions. One is just a radio-controlled car that just speeds along the ground, and another is just this random guy who just does parkour all over the city. Like if you want to talk about the spirit of what Slamdance is, this pretty much encapsulates it. So it does drag a couple of times, but it really is just three human stories that, again, they don't intertwine really, but they all know each other. All these kids know each other. The editing and the cinematography were just absolutely fantastic. Like this is really well put together. The young actors all do a tremendous job. Like there's not a bad performance to be had, and there's a focus on realism and social interactions. The guy Toussaint talking to the mystery woman over the phone, this isn't like the beginning of a rom-com. This is just, hey, I found this number, I called you. Like she never even says her name, but she helps him because, hey, it's a connection. It's someone like I had hoped that this bottle would have made it to like Paris or something like that, but the next town over, sure, why not? Like it's a way to gain perspective, and that's kind of what a festival like Slamdance is all about. It's about showing alternative perspectives.
All right, that sounds good, man. What's the next movie?
Okay, so this was my favorite of the festival. Just on the title alone, you kind of have to be intrigued. Portal to Hell. I just love that. It's like, here's a movie, it's called Portal to Hell. And here's the weird thing. Yeah, there's a portal to hell in this movie. It is treated so casually. It's kind of amazing. So this is a horror comedy. It chiefly stars relative newcomers Romina Dugo and Trey Holland. Holland plays this guy named Dunn, who is a debt collector. Like he's the guy who calls you and says, "Hey, you all owe this money," and they've contacted me to contract me out to collect on your debts. And of course, he gets berated incessantly by the people he calls because he's harassing them. It's his job to do that. But he's trying to do the best he can. He's a genuinely nice guy, and he goes across the street from his apartment building, goes to the laundromat, meets up with the lady who works there. Her name is Ed. That's Romina Dugo, and all of a sudden, one of the dryers just turns into a portal to hell. Fire and screaming and all this ominous stuff behind it. Just a dryer in the middle of the laundromat. And we're like, what the hell is all this about? But again, there's like, it's not this whole thing like, oh my God, what is this? Let's explore it. It's like, is that a portal to hell? I think it's a portal to hell. It's like very casual about it. So a demon comes out of the portal by the name of Chip. He's played by Richard Kind, who's one of the greatest character actors out there. The demon is there to collect the soul of Dunn's neighbor, Mr. Bobshank, who's played by one of the other greatest character actors of all time, Keith David. Absolutely immaculate. Dunn's like, but why would Mr. Bobshank go to hell? He's a very nice guy. Everybody loves him. Chip's like, well, he owes a debt. He did something. He owes a debt. So Dunn kind of makes a deal with him. It's like, if you give me 3 souls in exchange, shove them through the portal, then I can let him go. And then it just becomes this weird, insane comedy of not just finding potential victims to put in the portal, but how easily they accept their situation. I mean, there's one character who, as soon as he realizes what's going on, it's like, oh no, dude, how did you know I was a Satanist? This is awesome. It's like, and he just gleefully jumps into the portal. Like, what's going on here? The performances are really great across the board. The writing is spectacular. Like, this is very funny, but also sneakily poignant because there are a couple of moments where Richard Kind interacts with Trey Hyland, basically kind of, as like status updates, and he's being his normal Richard Kindy self, just a complete mensch. But he does clue us into like some weird theories about what the afterlife might entail, as to who goes to heaven and hell and why, and it all becomes about whether you're able to forgive your own debts, which is, of course, a very relevant topic in just economically today for so many people. But it's like, it's not whether you did something good or bad, it's how you feel about what you did, be it good or bad, how much it weighs down on you. And that's incredibly profound in the middle of this comedy where Michael McDonald from Mad TV gets his arm ripped off. It's very. I'm amazed at how well the film juggled the tones of what's going on here, to be so funny, but also very sneakily, resonant about how much pain we put on ourselves for things we might have done. It's like. It's amazing to, in the same breath, have a contemplation about suicide, and then have Keith David deliver like the moral of the story, which is literally watch your own dick. It was like, it's okay. I loved every second of this, and sharing this with, again, like 300 people in an empty soundstage. Laugh riot. Everybody is just falling over themselves. This is amazing. Like, I would say this is probably the most mainstream film that I saw at the festival. The one most likely to get picked up by some kind of a distributor. And even then, probably it would just end up on Hulu or something, maybe on Shudder, because again, it is horror comedy. But this is something like really special. Like I'm you're mixing new actors with established veterans, and they're doing something just so bonkers that you can't help but just be transfixed by it, and then it hits you in the heart in a way that you honestly would never consider, much less expect. Like, I was genuinely floored by this.
All right, man, moving on. Those two sound really good. What's the next one?
Next one is a documentary. It won an audience prize. This is called Coroner to the Stars. Very LA-centric of a movie. This is about Dr. Thomas Noguchi, who was, for about a 15-year period in the 60s through the early 80s, he was the chief medical examiner and coroner of Los Angeles County. An immigrant from Japan in the post-World War II era, where the Japanese were not quite welcome in this country, he still worked really hard and rose through the ranks as a pathologist, became the county coroner. Part of his duty was to basically lead the autopsies and medical examinations of some of the most famous and infamous celebrity deaths that have happened in this city. The first one being RFK, Bobby Kennedy, when he got assassinated. We all know the history of Sirhan Sirhan with regard to that, but the big thing is Noguchi raised some eyebrows because he said that the shot came from behind that killed Kennedy, not from in front. He concluded essentially that Sirhan fired but missed, and the actual fatal bullet was friendly fire from Secret Service and law enforcement. That definitely got him into some trouble because his findings did not fit the narrative. So we have this whole kind of history of his career with some of his former colleagues that are still alive. George Takei, the famous actor from Star Trek, who was interned as a Japanese American during the war. There's a whole subsection about how race plays a role in this whole thing, to the point where he nearly lost his job once after the RFK report, and then lost it permanently after the deaths of William Holden and Natalie Wood, because basically Hollywood got behind their friends and said, why are you saying that William Holden was drunk when he died? He wasn't an alcoholic. Someone heard screams from the boat. How do you say that Natalie Wood's death was an accident? You know, I was like, there's a weird kind of synergy with it where it's Dr. Noguchi's commitment to being as accurate as possible, but he does enjoy the cameras. He does enjoy the intention. And there's a side tangent about the creation of the television show Quincy M.E., which kind of inflated his own ego, because Quincy had a Japanese assistant on the show, but the actual Quincy was much more based on Noguchi. And then Noguchi in turn said, well, maybe I need to be a bit more flamboyant and Hollywood with this. Like, there's a weird kind of conundrum about this. There are some liberties taken. There's some important details that were omitted for the sake of the film. But, to basically have this idea of, this one man was put in charge of so many high-profile investigations where police, law enforcement, lawyers, they have their own agenda of who to arrest and who to prosecute, to get convictions, all that fun stuff. But sometimes the science doesn't align with that. And it's a question of, do you change the narrative or do you change the facts? His work led to the arrest of Charles Manson because he did the autopsy on Sharon Tate. But at the same time, his thoroughness and his ability to buck what other people are saying with his medical opinions ended up being his own downfall. And Dr. Noguchi, he's still alive. He's 98 years old. He's still alive, and he did attend the festival. He attended the screening. So, like, death is basically all around, has been part of his life. But he's found these grace notes throughout, mostly due to his late wife, but also just this commitment to the truth, wherever it may lead. And yeah, he admits he's made mistakes, which is a very humanizing characteristic. Like, just this ability to say, yeah, I am an imperfect being created by an imperfect being. It's like, just having that humility puts him above a lot of other documentary subjects we've seen over the years. So that allows us to basically say, like, well, maybe race did play a part in his disciplinary actions. Like, one of the major points is post RFK. This isn't mentioned in the movie, but he did tender his resignation, but then tried to withdraw it, and then he basically had to be in hearings to see if he could keep his job. We just skipped to the hearings. We don't mention that he initially was willing to resign. Instead, we frame it around a county board member who was, like, in charge of budgeting and everything like that. He was asking for more money to basically properly staff his office. There at the time, his office was equipped to handle about 1,200 something cases a year, and they were trying to handle like 8,000, like just dangerously understaffed. And the board guy's like, no, you're not getting any money. So he went above their head straight to the LA Board of Supervisors, who gave him the money. And there's a story thread about, that angry, disgruntled individual who was at the time very anti-immigrant, trying to crusade as revenge. How true that is, who knows? It definitely fits an entertaining narrative, which kind of circles back on Noguchi anyway. So who knows what exact liberties were taken, but it fits. And that's what kind of makes this fascinating. Because again, celebrity deaths are not a new topic. We get them every few days. I mean, as the time we're recording this, we're only 2 weeks removed from Gene Hackman. It's like, and that happened under very mysterious circumstances. And now we know that there's, potential like rare heart diseases and hantavirus and all this other stuff associated with how Hackman and his wife and his dog all passed away within a few days of each other and weren't discovered till a week later. Like, horrible tragedy. But this is the kind of thing that would have been Noguchi's bread and butter.
All right, that sounds good, man. What's the next movie?
kind of a late addition here, but I was excited to watch it. It's a film called Alice Hart. I decided to see it because I met the people behind it while we were watching Portal to Hell. Like they sat next to me in there, and just got to talking to them. It's like, okay, this sounds very fascinating. I want to check it out. It's got kind of a Clerks vibe to it. It's set in Philadelphia, and it's very Philly as far as like the tone and the characters are concerned. But the black and white photography, the kind of arrested development of the characters, like I definitely got an early Kevin Smith vibe from it. So if you're into that sort of thing, which I am, this might be a film for you. So Alice Hart, that is her full name, Alice-Hart. Uh, she is a student at Drexel, and she's in her final semester as a creative writing student, to basically get her degree. And the first day of her thesis class, she gets into an argument with the professor, and he kicks her out of the class, and she drops out. Because of that, her mother, uh, a Filipino immigrant, has decided to cut her off. Like, if you're not in school, I'm not paying your rent. So Alice Hart, she's played by Lisa Karen Dang Sweeney. She won an acting award at the festival for her performance. Uh, she breaks up with her boyfriend Lyman, who is a complete hipster d bag, and literally moves next door, like to this neighboring unit of her building with this guy named Tony, who is also recently through a breakup. And what I love about them is that this is not a romantic coupling. This is a celebratory platonic friendship between a man and a woman. You don't get that often in films. I want to say like one of the best ones I've seen recently. I think it was called Together Together with Ed Helms and Patty Harrison a couple years ago. It was like the celebration of platonic love rather than romantic. It's very nice. And so yeah, Alice Hart basically has to navigate, how do I get a job? How do I, finish school? How do I pay my rent? Tony is basically, the angel on her shoulder telling her to grow up and stop trying to, compensate and fill in gaps with her friends, or getting back with Lyman, or fighting with the egotistical professor. Like, they have this wonderful dynamic, and it's very sweet and very funny, but not fall over funny. It's a classical comedy rather than a slapstick comedy kind of thing. I really love the two lead performances. And again, I love the way it was shot and edited, because again it made me feel like I was watching Clerks, but set in Philadelphia rather than Jersey. So me being a kid from Delaware, Philly's my second home, so it's like it hits me in the right places. But yeah, this whole idea of self-examination for people at a crossroads in their life, it's a spiritual companion to gamma rays, if you want to think of it that way. Uh, maybe more audience friendly because it's American rather than French Canadian, but very similar themes, only without the whole social interaction subplots. This is very much a, how do I take the next step? How do I move forward in my life type of movie. And I found myself just sitting there watching it and just thinking to myself, like, yeah, this is real. We have all been there. Like, one of the weird like mantras that I've heard over the course of my life is like, when it comes to kids, especially when they're young adults, you have to let them make their own mistakes. You know, a parent's job or a friend's job is not to criticize them, it's to keep them honest. And once they've made their mistakes, be there for them and help them correct them. And that's what this movie really shines. Like, Alice Hart makes a lot of mistakes, but she has that self-awareness to realize what she's doing and still try to better herself each time. Like, that is real growth. And again, not a trope you often see in mainstream movies these days. If this were a Hollywood movie, she would be, an up and coming assistant at a major ad agency ready to climb the corporate ladder, but oh no, how do I get a boyfriend type of movie. This is just an honest character study about someone making the mistakes that we all made in our 20s and being there to just say, yep, you done messed up. Now let's fix it.
We got to wrap up, but for those who want to read more of your reviews, see your stuff, where can they find you?
All right, you can find me at actuallypaid.com. You can find me on X and YouTube at actually_paid. And I am now on Blue Sky, actuallypaid.bluesky.social. Go ahead and follow me there. And of course, right here on the BTRP Media Network.
So that's all we got for you today. Thanks for taking this trip down the rabbit hole once again. Now, for more of our content, you can always find it on the website, norestfortheweekendpodcast.com. And all these videos are on YouTube, youtube.com/getbehindtherabbit. And now you can find all of our content, including Bill's content and Homebodies Only and Made with Jackie Hansel and our other programming at btrpmedia.com, where you'll also find our Patreon, and you can become a member, which is great because it's a one-stop shop for all the content. So thanks so much, and thank you, Bill, for doing this, and thanks to our sponsor, Blackmagic Design. For Behind the Rabbit Productions, I'm Jason Godbey. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
This is the BTRP Media Network.